Fate, a powerful word that many people use to describe aspects of their lives that otherwise would be unexplainable. According to Oxford Languages, fate is defined as the development of events beyond a person's control, regarded as determined by a supernatural power. Sayings such as, "it was meant to be," "it must be fate," "God's will," or "it's written in the stars," all reference this idea of attributing the unexplainable or life-changing instances to a power outside of one's individual control. Although fate is not something that everyone believes in, what is fascinating is how the concept has manifested itself in so many different forms across religions, cultural beliefs, and even modern hobbies. Different religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all put their faith in God. Some people seek out psychics who look to the spirit world for guidance, or astrologers who reference the stars or horoscopes to track one's life. To others, fate may be as simple as asking a magic 8-ball a question or getting excited over what the little paper slip inside a fortune cookie reads. This idea of looking to a higher universal power for guidance on one's life has taken shape in so many different forms. But why? Why do so many people seek out answers from the intangible to guide their physical lives? What does this idea of fate mean to people? I took these questions to 3 different people, all of whom have different perceptions of fate, to see if they could describe what it meant to them. First, I talked to my good friend Mia, who closely follows horoscopes, in hopes of learning more about how the ever-growing trend of modern astrology takes place in her life.
My name is Mia. I'm from California, 19 years old, and I'm a sophomore at WashU. I think the word fate means, I guess it's sort of the way that people believe in the way that things happen. I know that's sort of vague, but it's like people looking to have a sort of an answer to these unanswered questions that humans deal with. Often it is due to people's individual choices, and obviously because there are so many people and so many people make different choices that oftentimes something will happen and there's not really a real explanation for it because there's just so many things that sort of led to that thing happening. So I don't necessarily think that there's one sort of divine being that is controlling everything, but I kind of do think that often things will happen and there isn't really an explanation that is easily answerable. I kind of do feel like time is very linear, like I like to think of it sort of as like a timeline, like even the stuff in the future that I haven't experienced yet already exists, like I'm just like walking up to it. But so then it's like, oh yeah, like fate sort of determines everything, but also that means I can still make choices. So horoscopes are a placement given to you based on the time that you were born. So if you're born in September, I'm born September 19th, so I'm a Virgo. But because of the time I was born and the location I was born, there are tons of different other houses and signs that correlate to me, and they kind of influence my personality, I believe. Horoscopes are determined by the placement of the stars, and they give you advice and they give you guidance for your day-to-day life. What I like to look for when I'm reading my horoscope is advice based on positions that I'm in. So if I'm making a difficult decision, or I'm in a sort of transition period, or especially last year with the pandemic, there are a lot of uncertainty. So looking for that advice was really helpful to sort of be like, oh, right now you might be feeling a little bit lost, but look to people that you love and care about, and it just sort of reminds you to check in on yourself. I think that because they are sort of determined by the stars, and it's sort of more of like a scientific way of sort of looking for personality quirks and stuff like that, I believe in it more, because what is more concrete than the stars or astronomical placements. So during different times of the year, like if Mercury is in retrograde, that's a very commonly talked about one, that will influence different people in different ways. So, sometimes you'll have a sort of weird week. You would sort of see, oh, like maybe the stars weren't really, lined up. Maybe this was just an off week for me. And it sort of gives you a way to sort of put that faith in something else, I think. So Virgos are typically a little bit type A, really organized, a little bit perfectionist, really caring, and they really like for things to sort of be done right. With astrology, I think especially only like bad traits get talked about. Like Scorpios are vindictive and revengeful, or like Geminis are, flirty and annoying. But Virgos are also known to be really caring, and really smart, and they also are known to give really good advice. I checked this app called The Pattern that I really, really like. And I was talking to my friend about this recently, my friend Marcella, who's a little bit of a skeptic, but has been trying to lean into astrology. And she said she really likes The Pattern because they don't explicitly say, like, oh, like Tauruses are meant to be feeling this. It's very personal. And it really does feel more like advice for your day to day of sort of like, oh, like right now you might be feeling these sort of emotions. So you should look into this. And it is pretty accurate. But my mom has an astrologer. And I feel like when you get really, really into the actual science of it, because, it's like the stars and everything, when you really get into it, then it ends up becoming more realistic. I kind of feel like it's sort of similar to the way that a lot of people will go to a priest or something like that when they're older. It's just kind of nice to have a sort of mentor figure, to talk about bigger issues with. It makes you feel complete and connected in a way.
Like Mia said, looking to the stars as a means to guide one's life is one way that fate has manifested itself. But beyond the stars, what other cultural practices shape our view of fate? Another close friend of mine, Jackson, is a devout Christian and was willing to meet with me to discuss his faith and how he believes that God controls the idea of fate.
My name is Jackson Cox. I am a sophomore here at WashU, and I'm from Danville, Kentucky. Do I think there's a higher power that guides our lives? Yes, definitely. I think that we are all made in God's image, and a piece of Him, regardless of if we accept His Son as Lord or not, lives in each of us. And I think, like, you look at things like morality and morals that have developed, they don't just happen out of thin air. I think each human, even if they want to deny it, has a piece of God in them. I grew up in the church. I've been a Christian since 6th grade, most of my life. It's always been just like the part of my life that gives me meaning, gives me purpose. It is my life. It's not even a part of my life. So I grew up in a small non-denominational church in central Kentucky. Very, very kind of typical worship music, and just a lot of people showing up on Sunday. And my parents, the way they raised me, wasn't an option. Sunday morning, there every morning, and it was annoying at times, but you grew to love it. And your friends at church became your family, and that community is something that's just like amazing, especially moving to college when it actually becomes your choice finally. Like, you don't have to continue to go to church, you don't have to continue to follow this faith, but like I wouldn't know what else to do. It keeps me going. It's something that inspires me to want to be there for others so that they can know the goodness of and the love that Christ has shown me. I guess I would define fate as a plan or some sort of set out, it's hard to explain. I think I would define fate as this set out plan that you are in the place you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. That's a very general explanation and definition, but when you're applying it to faith, I think that fate is more of a catch-all term for the plan that God has for all of us. I don't know if necessarily we're guided every day and that we just wake up and He's like the puppet master. That's what people get up confused with, like, oh, He's the puppet master working His strings, and in a way it can be considered like that, but I think that in His all-powerful, all-knowing self, He has the ability to take the various decisions and things that and actions we take daily and use them into this ever-moving living plan that allows his will to be done through us. And so that's a very difficult concept to grasp, because it's something, extremely above this world. And that's something that, as a Christian, you just have to have faith, because we can't understand the mind of a higher power. That's why they are the higher power. We can't put God into a box trying to understand him, because he's made us, he's limited us to this world. And he is has no limitations on who he is and what he can do. The concept that that God is all-knowing and omniscient, it makes it seem like there is some concept of fate, and that we only have one way that things can happen for us. But even though he knows that plan, I feel like, it doesn't necessarily negate the fact that we have free will and the ability to choose, and things change. The fate is just a way of simplifying our purpose that God has for all of us. I don't know if there's been one moment exactly where I was like, this is it, this is the moment, this is why I'm believing. But I mean, the one of the biggest things in Scripture that God uses, and the writers of the epistles use, they talk about it, talk a lot about it in Hebrews 11 and Hebrews 12, is just the fact that there's been so much that God has done for you in the past, and has not only done for you, but has done for other people of faith. That just those small, continual little things he has done for you, and at the time they were such large, heavy burdens. And you think back now and you're like, I forgot he did that. It's such a small thing. A personal example for me, in middle school, I had partial complex seizures, and that was a pretty big deal. Wouldn't seize, wouldn't move around, nothing too bad, but I would just forget where I was. And so that was as a kid, and previously I'd had 2 different head surgeries. I don't know if you can see my scar in the footage, but scary time for my family and my parents. And then there wasn't an amazing miracle. There wasn't a healing. I took medicine for 2 years and didn't have another one. And so that was just an amazing thing. Still haven't had any problems since. It was big at the time, and now I forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many small things where I'm so worried and praying and crying out to God, help me with this, and yet he's come through and healed, and it's amazing. To the other part of your question, are there times that have tested your faith? That's the thing, is I was healed in that, but there's people who have partial complex seizures, who might have 3 a day, and with medication continue to have those. And they might be just as faithful or more faithful than me. And so that's something that I really wrestle with. I know 2 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, my aunt, she was just turned 50, and she died of breast cancer. She'd been battling for about 1.5 years. Very difficult. She has 2 kids. One's 13, and she has autism. Another one's a 10-year-old boy, and they just, I don't know, very faithful family, and they just really need their mom. And that's something I've still struggled with. It's why, God, would you take someone like that away from them? They definitely need her, and it's in his plan. People get in remission from cancer all the time, and a lot of people, they don't. So that's something that you do have to struggle with, and be that's faith at that part. It's God, it's not up to me, it's up to you. And that's where the faith comes in. Even though, as far as fate and understanding the plan, it's how does this plan benefit them very much? So I think a great passage about that, I believe it's Psalm 89. I think it's of David, I can't remember, but he just cries out for 20 verses, just why, what is going on? You've been not working with us right now. And at the end he says, but I will still praise the Lord. And it just ends one verse. And so I think that's something, that's a big thing of faith. That's when you have to just be I realize that it's above me. I cannot do this on my own. It's not for my own understanding. And I just have to trust that he knows what he's doing.
What's your favorite passage?
My favorite passage is probably Matthew 6:34. Christ says, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." It says favorite there, just in case you were wondering. It's a fire passage because it's like, yeah, even though birds just fly around, don't even prepare, they're still fed, you know. So why worry? Let's roll.
Jackson believes in God's will, and that as the higher power, he has a plan for all of us. Similarly to this idea of God being the guiding force, I spoke with psychic medium Juliana Sanders, who explained how to her this takes shape in the form of the spirit world. As a medium, Juliana receives messages from her spirit guides, and I had the chance to do a tarot card reading with her to get a first-hand look as to how she taps into this spiritual connection.
My name is Juliana Sanders. I'm a psychic medium. I've always had the abilities since the time I could talk. They became more prominent when I was 9 years old, when my grandfather was murdered. I have several spirit guides that I talk to on a regular basis. One of them is Sophia, another is Heina, also an aunt that passed away previously, Maggie. I help people from all over the world. This is what I do. I dedicate my life completely to helping people from all over the world. This definitely chose me. And when I decided to go my own way several times, I was always pulled back, almost as if by force, and told, no, this is what you will do. You're supposed to help people.
Has it been like a really fulfilling, I guess, path for you?
It is. It is, because I know at the end of each day, when I'm done, I know that there's somebody somewhere that I've helped, because I help people all over the world. I know that they're going to bed with a lighter heart.
So when you do a psychic reading, I guess what is, because I've never gotten a psychic reading before, so I don't know what to expect. And I know some psychics use the tarot cards, some don't. So, yeah, I guess just what should I expect?
Because I'm a medium, I get messages, obviously, through my guides. I more lay the cards out for the person that is getting the reading, so that they can kind of see through the imagery of the cards, which are to me the vehicles that help to understand where we're going. I lay them out, and you'll see that what I've said comes right up in the cards through the imagery that's on the cards.
Gotcha. Okay.
With me and Sophia, it's more telepathic, because it's as if what she's telling me pops into my mind, and I know, and I will tell a lot of people as I'm shuffling the cards, it's because I'm listening to the things that she's already saying. And I will start to say things before I lay any cards out, before I do anything, because those are things that she's starting to already tell me before anything happens. She came, I would say, a little bit later than Maggie, and then I have another spirit guide, Heina, that came when I was 15. I was actually in physical danger when Heina came.
Wow.
I was very, very sick.
So you think that like sparked her kind of coming into your life?
Yes, I was very, very sick, and my parents left me in a hotel room, sick.
Wow.
I had 104 temperature.
Oh my God.
And she came to me. I needed assistance. I mean, I needed to be cooled. And so she literally brought me wet washcloths.
Oh my
Put them
gosh.
on my face. When my parents got back to the hotel, they were like, "Oh, you got up." No, the nurse brought me. And I thought she was a nurse at that time. I didn't understand. She told me, "I'll always be with you, my child." But I didn't quite understand the meaning of that in that moment, especially being as sick as I was. And they said, no, you had to. There was no nurse. You had to. There's wet washcloths here. I said, no, the nurse brought those. And Haina is one of the Hawaiian spirit goddesses.
Okay.
And she has always been with me. Now I didn't physically see her like I'm seeing you and me. Again, I was 15 at that time in Hawaii until I went back to Hawaii in 2017. At that time, I went to Rainbow Falls, where that's kind of where she presides over.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw her at that time. Realize this is at a very busy time of the year because it's whale season. And so there's tons of visitors everywhere. And yet, when I went to Rainbow Falls, it was as if they put an invisible shield up. There was no one there except me and her.
Wow.
She appeared to me there just as if she was here. After we had our visit and I went to leave, it was as if everybody that had been waiting to get there was on the road on the way back. I mean, it was full of cars. Like the parking lot should have been full when I got there, and yet it wasn't. And it was as if Spirit kept everybody away so that I could see her.
And have that
And have-
connection with her. Wow.
At that time.
That's amazing.
And so she's still with me. With fate, we all do have a life plan,
Mm-hmm.
but realize that every one of us have free will. Can that free will change what's supposed to happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have a plan. Our destiny, which some people call fate, our destiny is pre-planned.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when somebody will veer off on another path. Usually when they do, they'll find that they encounter a lot of obstacles, things that don't work. And it can take years before they get back on the path that they were meant to take. I feel like it depends on what has taken them off of that path. Sometimes I believe that when people are introduced to substances, whether it be alcohol, whether it be, drugs, things that are not supposed to be in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
on a harmful basis level, I would say, those things can take people off of their path. And that brings us to the point that we do come back. Once we cross over, our souls do come back into a new body. That person then picks up from where they were learning life lessons in this lifetime, and then they start to learn those lessons again. They learn lessons the next life. They should have gotten to this level, this life, but then they didn't because they made wrong turns. So they have to start back here and go forward.
For people who aren't psychics, seeking out guidance from whatever medium they may choose, maybe it's going to you, maybe it's practicing a religion. I feel like it's helpful to have something that you practice to, I guess, kind of guide your way through life.
Absolutely. Everybody has to believe that there is a higher power, whatever name that takes. Because we're all, whether you realize it or not, we're all talking to the same person. It's just that maybe each culture calls it something different, but it is all the same entity.
Juliana's psychic reading was super interesting and eye-opening. It also was fascinating to learn more about the subject and hear her story. Through talking with Juliana, Jackson, and Mia, I discovered more about why each person holds their respective beliefs. Despite coming from very different backgrounds, all three acknowledge the idea of fate in some way. They are just 3 examples of how millions of people around the world seek out answers and guidance from the intangible to navigate these situations. If I've learned anything from my conversations with Mia, Juliana, and Jackson, it's that maybe it's within our nature to look beyond the physical. Maybe we need a form of belief or spiritual practice to put faith in and help us through life. Because sometimes our own individual actions may seem overwhelmed by uncontrollable forces, and that's okay. The truth is, life is crazy, and chaotic and ever-changing and beautiful. We just need a little help to make it through sometimes.
Let me let you put your energy in and think about what you want to ask of my guides. So you just put your energy in like this.
Okay.
Think about what you'd like to ask. And then when you're done, stack them into 3 stacks. Choosing a path. Does it make sense that you have 2 paths, 2 opportunities, 2 ways to go, and that you're trying to figure out? You're looking within. You've been trying to figure out which path you really want to take.
Yeah.